Hello and welcome to the East Gym of Fort Lee High School here in Fort Lee, New Jersey. We are about to get underway in a state volleyball match between the Bridgemen of Fort Lee and the Marauders of Mount Olive, New Jersey. My name is Tommy Aquilina. You are watching the YouTube stream of, in this case, Fort Lee Volleyball, all Fort Lee athletics. Today it is the NJSIAA tournament, first round, North Jersey, Section 1, Group 3. And again, it's going to be the Bridgemen against the Marauders. Fort Lee, a very good regular season. They went 17-8 and were undefeated in their big North American division. Now hoping to defeat Mount Olive in the first round of the NJSIAA tournament and advance to take on Tenafly. Tenafly, the number 1 seed, they won their round 1 match by default. Really, they didn't have to play as the 16 seed ended up backing out. So Tenafly is waiting for the winner of this one. First serve will go to Mount Olive. And the first point will also go to the Marauders. Initially sent back by middle blocker Sophia Pagan, one of the leaders of this Fort Lee team. A team that head coach John Ziemba will tell you is led by their seniors. And another quick point that time, an ace actually, for the Marauders. In the regular season, Fort Lee won the Big North American Division with a perfect 8-0 record. Cliffside Park came in second place at 6-2. Fort Lee 17-8 overall. They've won their last 2 matches, and before this one, head coach John Ziemba said he felt like on Wednesday at Cresskill, Fort Lee played one of their better matches of the year. They won in 3 sets. Trying to get their first point of this one. Good defense there by Mount Olive, keeping it alive. And the spike attempt is converted. That is number 13, Tori Goris, for Fort Lee, getting them on the board. And we do have a scoring change. That initial ace was not to be, so it is 1-1, not 2-1 Mount Olive. And first serve of the day for Fort Lee. It's going to be Mia Frankel. That one defended well by Elise Ivazoglu. However, Mount Olive is going to once again come away with it. So now it's 2-1. The Marauders led by Tom Rezka. And that is an ace as it lands in between Frankel and Katie Murtaugh, number 11. 3-1 Mount Olive. Don't be fooled by their 1-9 conference record. They went 10-11 overall, the Marauders did, and they were only a few power points behind Fort Lee. This is the 8-9 game. Fort Lee hosting, they are the 8 seed. Ivazoglu sets it up, and Pagan is going to end up getting the point for Fort Lee. 3-2 Mount Olive. Here in the first match of the day. Now it's going to be Catherine Borisov serving. Mount Olive returning it. It's defended well. And Fort Lee has tied the game at 3. Borisov serving again. Pagan trying to play defense on that one, but it's going to go to Mount Olive, so they retake the lead. Not a lot of information for either of these teams to go off of. Geographically, they are not close. They didn't play any of the same opponents this season. 21 games for Mount Olive and 25 for Fort Lee. Good effort by Murtaugh, but the point is going to go to Mount Olive. So a 5-3 lead now for the Marauders. In their last 4 matches, they are 2-2 and 10-11 overall. And there they pick up an ace. That'll make it 6-3, as Frankel was unable to return that one. Serving now for the Marauders is number 21, Rose Sarali, a junior. Pagan at the net, and that is also going to be a Mount Olive point, 7-3 Marauders. Timeout taken, as John Ziemba wants to talk things over with his squad. A 7-3 Mount Olive advantage here in the early going, and right now Rose Sarali is serving very well for the Marauders. Again, this is the 8-9 game, so we should expect a pretty close one. These two teams doing very well. Fort Lee recently bumped up from Group 2 to Group 3, and this year, the stepping up in competition certainly did not adversely affect them. As I mentioned, 8-0 in division. That's a 5-team division, also featuring Dwight Morrow, Ridgefield Park, Dumont, and Cliffside Park. And 9-8 in non-division games. Last loss for the Bridgemen came 7 days ago on October 22nd against St. Mary. Since then, they've won 2 in a row. Looking to come back from this 7-3 deficit here in the first one. Sarali serves. It hits the net and goes over, so it's now 8-3 Mount Olive. They got lucky. A sub for Fort Lee. Setter Sarah Wong comes on. Once again, it hits the net, and Fort Lee unable to save that one either. 9-3 Mount Olive, and 2-0 coming out of the timeout. Once again, Sarali hits the net, but it goes over a third consecutive time, and a third consecutive point for the Marauders. Avizoglu trying to rally her team. This one gets over the net on its own. What's the call here? They're going to give the point to Mount Olive again. Avizoglu was at the net trying to meet her opponent, and the Marauders get the point. 4-0 since that timeout in favor of Mount Olive. Going for the spike on that one was Paige Eno, number 27, unable to get it, so it's now 12-3 Mount Olive. They have gotten off to a very hot start. Now we have a substitution. Eno out, Kasia Polakowska in. And Polakowska trying to get the spike, but instead she sends it into the net. 13-3 Mount Olive. Rose Sarali still serving for the Marauders. Avizoglu sets it up for Pagan, and Pagan gets the point, breaking a long streak for the Marauders. Fort Lee will now get to serve. It's 13-4. We have a substitution as Katie Murtaugh comes out, and Alexandra Conti steps onto the floor. Pagan to serve. And another point for Mount Olive. Good serve by Pagan, but a good return by the Marauders, and they once again go up by 10. 14-4 here in the early going. It's going to be a new server for the Marauders. and she picks up an ace as Catherine Borisov cannot return it. That's Amanda, let me try to pronounce this name, Prybazuski on the serve for the Marauders. It's a 15-4 advantage. Polakowska gets Fort Lee on the board. It's 15-5. And Polakowska will now quickly be subbed out for Eno. Wong comes out as well, replaced by number 13, Tori Goris. Eno to serve. And Eno, that's not going to count as an ace. Will the volley be returned? No, it will not be. So it is a point for Fort Lee. It's 15-6. Fort Lee needs to go on a little bit of a run here to get back in this one. Sorali sends it over. Eno saves it. That's Alexandra Conti, last to touch it, sending over the net and getting Fort Lee once again on the board. It's 15-7. Couple points in a row for the Bridgemen. Obviously, they need to go on a longer run. Eno with a good serve. Now saves it. Hits off the ceiling. That counts. Conti over the net. Now being returned and getting the point is Mount Olive. Hit off the ceiling, did not phase Fort Lee. This is, of course, their home gymnasium, their East Gymnasium. However, Mount Olive still comes away with it, so it's 16-7 now. And Mishka Fernandez, the sophomore, will do the serving. And it's out, so a point for Fort Lee. It's 16-8. A gift for the Bridgemen. We have a substitution as number 26, Emma Schulman, comes in. Schulman replaces Ivazoglu. And Schulman to serve. Borisov sets it up for Conti. It is sent back by Mount Olive, and they're going to come away with the point on this one. Nicely done by the Marauders, and they're up 17-8. Another substitution for Fort Lee. And it'll be Ivazoglu now quickly replacing Schulman again. Sent right into the net on the serve attempt. So an easy point for Fort Lee. It's 17-9. Now serving for Fort Lee will be Katie Murtaugh. An 8-point deficit that Fort Lee is trying to make up here. Serve is good. It is returned. Borisov sets it up for Ivazoglu, who sets it up for Pagan. And Sophia Pagan, like she's done so many times this year, gets a point for Fort Lee. It's 17-10. Mount Olive does get it over. Borisov sets it up. And spiking it down is going to be Tori Goris. So it's 17-11. Fort Lee's going on a little bit of a run here. Murtaugh will get to serve again. Murtaugh with a good serve. But the point is going to go to Mount Olive. Spike is going to go to number 49, I believe, Sarah Shortino, for the Marauders. So an 18-11 advantage. Now it's going to be Emily Fusillars serving for the Marauders. She gets it over. Nice play by Murtaugh to save it. Goris sends it over. Really good defensive play by Pagan on the spike attempt. Murtaugh sends it over the net, but Mount Olive's going to come away with the point yet again. There was just no one in that area for Fort Lee, and it's now 19-11 Mount Olive. Mount Olive wearing their team colors, red and black, as opposed to Fort Lee white, orange, and black. I guess for Mount Olive, it'd be red, black, and yellow as well. Goris for Murtaugh, who sends it over the net. Good play, but it's returned well, and this time it cannot be returned by Ivazoglu. She got it over the net the first time, but the Marauder was right there to send it right back over, and Ivazoglu could not come back that quickly. So it's now 20-11 Mount Olive, and Fort Lee is really in trouble of dropping this first match. Saved by Murtaugh. Set up for Goris. It's returned by the Marauders. Nice play by Ivazoglu, but we continue on. Was that in or out? It was in, point to Mount Olive. Ball came over here towards the scoreboard. Or I guess the scoreboard's up there. It came over here towards the announcing booth. 21-11 Mount Olive. And it's their serve. Murtaugh sends it back for Ivazoglu. Goris sends it over. Returned by the Marauders. Pagan with a phenomenal defensive play. And Fort Lee's going to get a point there. 21-11 Mount Olive. And Goris will come off for Mia Frankel, who will serve. Frankel, the junior defensive specialist. She sends it over. And it's another point for Mount Olive. Really strong spike attempt there. No one on Fort Lee able to send it back. And once again, it's a 10-point advantage. It's going to be Erin McLaughlin serving for Mount Olive. And Pagan once again sends it over the net and gets Fort Lee a little bit closer. It's 22-13. Now it'll be Borisov serving again. She helped Fort Lee go on a little bit of a run with some solid serving before. Sends it over with the left hand. And this time it is sent out by Mount Olive. So a second straight point for Fort Lee. It's 22-14 Mount Olive here in the first match. Borisov sends it over. Good serve there. It was a low one, and I think that's going to go down as an ace as it was only hit once on the Mount Olive side. 22-15. This one is handled better by the Marauders. They send it over. It's saved initially, but ultimately Mount Olive will come away with the point on that one. So it's 23-15. And a couple more points. We'll have Mount Olive up 1-0. It's going to be Rose Cirali serving again. And she sends it right into the net. She did so well her last time serving. This time it's a point for Fort Lee. It's 23-16. And now Pagan will do the serving. Conti comes on. Sophia Pagan sends it over the net. And on the third try, it's sent right into the net. So 23-17 Mount Olive. Fort Lee making a little bit of a run here. Got off to a slow start. They've answered. They still need to go on a sustained run. And this time, Pagan's unable to save it. And so Mount Olive is 1 point away. Mount Olive makes a substitution. This is the match point. Eno, but it's saved by Cirali. It's up into the rafters, I guess. Up here in the ceiling, you've got like a tarp that cuts the gym in half, and then also, I believe, the plumbing, so they're going to restart that one. No point for anybody. Still, though, this is match point for Mount Olive. Borisov keeps it alive for Pagan. It's going to be Ivazoglu sending it over. Returned, but very nicely saved by Conti. Eno sends it over on the second hit. 2 hits and it's over. Ivazoglu sends it over. Is that out? No, it is not. Point for Fort Lee. They're still alive. Really nicely done right there by Fort Lee. Now we're going to have a substitution. Goris will come on for Frankel, and it'll be Eno serving. 24-18 Mount Olive. Eno sends it over. Goris sends it over now. Once again, Mount Olive figuring out what they're going to do. It's sent over by number 19, Fernandez. Fort Lee gets it onto their side again, though, and they're unable to serve it, or to send it back. So 24-19 Mount Olive. Eno still serving. Ivazoglu sets up Goris. She sends it over. Now it's Fernandez, but the Marauder Fernandez sends it into the net, so it's 24-20. Fort Lee has to get 4 more points in a row. Eno sends it over. Really nicely done right there by the Marauders. Amanda Pribazewski sends it over, but did not use nearly all of her strength. Caught Fort Lee off guard, and so that's going to do it for the first match. Mount Olive comes away with it, and now we're going to take a quick break. They will switch sides of the court, and we will get ready for the second match here, which Fort Lee will need to win in order to keep this thing going. It ended up being close. I believe the final score of that one was 25-20, as John Ziemba talks a little bit now with one of his players and tries to get them ready for this second match, which is going to be a must-win. Slow start for Fort Lee. They were unable to come back. They end up losing that one 25-20. Obviously, they're going to want to get off to a better start here in the second match. 2 minutes and 20 seconds left until we begin the second one. Here at Fort Lee High School, specifically the East Gymnasium, for round 1 of the North Jersey Section 1 Group 3 bracket of the NJSIAA tournament. This is the 8-9 match between the number 8 Fort Lee Bridgman and the number 9 Mount Olive Marauders. The winner gets Tenafly, the top-seeded team. Fort Lee did not play Tenafly this season. They bowed out in the first round of the Bergen County tournament, losing 2 matches in a row at Paramus, hoping to do better in this tournament. They already have the 2022-23 Big North American Division title wrapped up. Now looking to get to the second round of the NJSIAA tournament and take on Tenafly. I'm going to step aside briefly and get you set up for the second match. Tommy Aquilina stepping back here on the mic with you as you are watching the YouTube stream of Fort Lee and Mount Olive Volleyball. Mount Olive won the first match, so now Fort Lee, after switching sides on the court, has to win the next two in order to survive the first round of the NJSIAA tournament. Rose Serali wearing a white shirt with red numbering as opposed to a red shirt with black numbering, stepping on the court. And it's going to be Frankel serving for Fort Lee to start things off here. Fort Lee needs to get off to a better start. They fell behind and were unable to get themselves out of a hole in the last match, and that's a good start, an ace for Mia Frankel. One nothing Fort Lee. And Frankel to serve again. This one is not going to be an ace. It's sent back over. Ivazoglu sets it up. Borisov with the left hand. Recovery from Mount Olive. Now Ivazoglu and nobody there. It's 2-0 Fort Lee. This is the start that Fort Lee wanted to get off to. Only 2 points, though. Obviously, they want to keep it going here. Frankel to serve again. With the right hand to the left side of the court. It is returned by Mount Olive. Now the answer from Fort Lee, and it's sent into the net on the return, I believe. Or no, actually, I'm not sure who that was getting it over for Fort Lee, but it was sent back into the net. And so it's 3-0 in favor of Fort Lee, the 8 seed in this 8-9 match. Serali keeping it alive for the Marauders. They send it back over. Saved by Borisov. Really nice defensive play right there by number 15, Amethyst Garcia of the Marauders. And Mount Olive is on the board. It's 3-1. Eno going for the spike. And Garcia sent it back over. First serve of the second match for the Marauders. That's number 8, Erin McLaughlin. And it's going to result in another point for Mount Olive. So it's 3-2 now in favor of Fort Lee. Substitution for John Ziemba's team. That's Paula Kauska coming in for Eno. It is sent back over by Fort Lee. And now we get a whistle in the middle of play. We're going to have a substitution now for Mount Olive. They just did something they were not allowed to do. Maggie Faustino comes on for McLaughlin. The point goes to Fort Lee. It's 4-2, and Borisov is serving, and she's going to pick up an ace as Fernandez was unable to return that cleanly. 5-2, Fort Lee. Borisov again. This time it is returned, but Prabazewski sends it right into the net. That's Danielle, the senior, as opposed to Amanda, the sophomore, and it's 6-2 Fort Lee. Borisov trying to pick on Fernandez, but she sends it out. Point for Mount Olive, it's 6-3. See the scoreboard there. Second set, it's 1-0 Mount Olive. Trying to close this thing out, but they trail 6-3. Now it's Serali to serve. Polakowska sends it over. Same team action for Mount Olive. They do get it over. Ivazoglu sets it up for Pagan. Now Pagan playing defense. And this one is going to go in favor of Fort Lee, I believe. Yes, it will. It's 7-3. Two players met at the net, and Fort Lee comes away with it. So now Alexandra Conti comes on, replacing Murtaugh. Przybylski sends it over. That's going to go down as a spike and a point for Mount Olive. It's 7-4. I believe that was Pagan who initially served it for Fort Lee. So the Marauders will make a couple substitutions. Sarah Shortino and the younger Przybylski, Amanda, will come on. And she's going to serve. Hits the net. Fort Lee keeps it alive really impressively, and we play on. Fernandez spikes it and gets the point for Mount Olive. It's 7-5. This one cleanly over the net. And Paula Kauska sent it right into the net. Obviously not what she intended to do. It's 7-6. Fort Lee has yet to trail in this second set. It is now 7-6. Sophia Pagan having a conversation with one of the officials. There are two of them for this state game, but I don't think anything is going to change. It's still 7-6 in favor of Fort Lee, and this one is sent out of play, so it's now 8-6. Fort Lee will make a sub. Frankel out. Nadia Sango in. And Eno to serve. Paige Eno sends it into the net, so it's 8-7, and now Mount Olive will serve. It's going to be Fernandez. Borisov comes back in for Fort Lee. Meanwhile, McLaughlin goes back in for the Marauders. Mia Fernandez just barely gets it over. Borisov's save opportunity does not work, so we are tied here in the second set. And this time, Fernandez is unable to get it over the net, and Fort Lee will maintain their lead. Again, Fort Lee hasn't trailed yet in this one. It's 9-8. They need to win this set and then the next one in order to advance. Schulman to serve. Mount Olive barely gets it over, and Conti hit it twice, so we're tied once again. Garcia replaces Surali. It's going to be Erin Perrault serving, number 10, for the Marauders. Fort Lee gets it over. And Conti jumps about as high as she can and outbids Garcia for that one. It's 10-9 Fort Lee. Conti will now come off. Murtaugh will come back on, and she will serve for the Bridgemen. 10-9 Fort Lee lead here in the second set. Fort Lee gets it back over. Now Mount Olive's turn. Sent over, and scoring on that one was McLaughlin. Second time was the charm. We were tied at 8, we were tied at 9, and now we're tied at 10. Emily Fusillars will come on and serve for the Marauders, looking to get them their first lead here in the second set. We have a whistle, and it's going to go in favor of Fort Lee. Second time that we got a whistle in the middle of a volley going against Mount Olive, and because of that, Fort Lee has an 11-10 lead. Frankel to serve now. Once again, targeting Fernandez. She is able to get it over, though. Off one of the backboards here in the gymnasium, Fort Lee keeps it alive and sends it over. Really nice play right there by Pagan. Great defense. Danielle Przybyszewski tried to send it over, but Pagan was right there, and Fort Lee now has a 2-point lead. Frankel gets to serve again. That time, I believe the ball hit something that it was not supposed to, and so another point for Fort Lee. It's 13-10. Frankel to serve with the right hand. Mount Olive gets it over. Now Pagan Garcia is unable to respond. It's 14-10. Fort Lee trying to put some distance between themselves and the Marauders. And once again, a whistle mid-volley. Some sloppy play from Tom Reska's team, and he's going to call a timeout. Only Fort Lee took a timeout in the last set. This time it is Tom Reska asking for one. It is a 15-10 Fort Lee advantage. In the first game, Mount Olive got off to a really fast start, and they were able to maintain that lead. This second set has been close throughout, but Fort Lee has never trailed. They currently have their largest lead at 15-10, trying to send this one to a winner-take-all third set. Once again, just to reiterate, the winner gets the top overall seed in this tournament, Tenafly. Tenafly is very good, but obviously both of these teams hope to be able to play them soon. So Reska has talked to his team. Of course, Ziemba also got to talk to his team. Timeout over. Here we go. Frankel with the serve. In the last set, the timeout really didn't help Fort Lee, and here the timeout really does not help Mount Olive as Fort Lee extends their lead at 16-10. Frankel's on a hot streak. She'll serve again. And this time, it was a Fort Lee player, I believe, getting too close to the net. So the streak ends at 16-11, and Erin McLaughlin will serve for Mount Olive. Fort Lee thought it was out. It is out, and so they'll get it right back. And McLaughlin will be subbed out for Maggie Faustino. Now it's Catherine Borisov to serve for Fort Lee. And that's going to go down as an ace for Borisov. Fernandez couldn't decide what to do, and it's 18-11 in favor of Fort Lee now. Again, a set that was close throughout. Fort Lee starting to separate a little bit. Fernandez trying to send it over. She's going to lose that battle to Iva Zoglu, and it's 19-11 in favor of Fort Lee. Borisov still picking on Fernandez. The Marauders are able to return this one. Good play by Faustino to keep it alive. We continue on. Iva Zoglu sets up Pagan. It is returned by Garcia. Fort Lee has to send it over. They do. Przybyszewski, and that time, Mount Olive comes away with the point. Murtaugh was unable to send it back. Sent it to the side a little bit, and that was the end of that. So it's now 19-12, and John Ziemba, a legendary Fort Lee coach, is going to take a timeout. Clearly, he feels like his team is in a danger zone. They lead this one 19-12, but obviously you don't want to take your foot off the gas pedal. They have to win this set and then the next set in order to advance. Mount Olive won the first set 25-20. This is about the time, though, where Fort Lee made a little bit of a run. They have a 7-point advantage here. They did make it close at the end, but ultimately Tom Rezka's team was able to hold on. So now each team has taken a timeout. It's going to be Rose Serali to serve for Mount Olive. They trail by 7. And she's going to pick up an ace. Neither Murtaugh nor Frankel was able to return it. It's 19-13. Mount Olive looking for the comeback and the win in back-to-back sets. This time it's Murtaugh, Ivazoglu, Pagan, but a really nice defensive play by Erin Perrault. Either Perrault or Perot is actually how that might be pronounced. Either way, Mount Olive with the point. It's 19-14. Fort Lee does return this one, but out of play. It's 19-15. A comeback win here in the second set is definitely still in play for the Marauders. Serali's trying to get them there. She sends it over, and that's not going to help. A 20-15 advantage. Serali covers her mouth. Can't believe that she just did that. It's going to be Pagan serving for Fort Lee. Conti comes back on. They have a 5-point advantage. They need 5 more. Ivazoglu sets up Conti. On the third hit, Mount Olive does send it back. Now Ivazoglu takes it herself. But that's going to go in favor of the Marauders. Someone was where they weren't supposed to be for John Ziemba's squad. So it's 20-16. It's going to be the younger Przybyszewski sister sending it over. Ivazoglu sets up Conti again. Mount Olive with the answer. On the third hit, can they send it over? They cannot. Another point for Mount Olive. It's 20-17, and Amanda Przybyszewski is going to get to serve again. That time, she sends it out. So once again, a 4-point advantage for Fort Lee. Nadia Sango will sub in. It's going to be Paige Eno serving. 21-17 Fort Lee. Eno's serve is out of play. It's 21-18. McLaughlin subs in. And it's going to be Fernandez serving for Mount Olive. And this time Fernandez sends it out. Now Shulman will serve in, or sub in rather, for Ivazoglu, and Emma Shulman will serve. McLaughlin gets it over, and Fort Lee volleys it into the net. It's 22-19. So when it gets late in the sets, the losing team will not go away. It's going to be Perot serving. Ivazoglu sends it over herself. This time she sets up Borisov, who sets for Sango. Mount Olive recovers. That's Sango again. Mount Olive once again has an answer, and they send it right back into the net. Sarah Shortino tried to send it over her head, and she sent it into the net. It's a 4-point set, and Fort Lee needs 2 more to secure it. Now Murtaugh to serve. And Fort Lee is 1 point away from taking this second set. Katie Murtaugh to finish this one off. Amethyst Garcia saves it. Sorali has to send it back. She does. Third hit coming now for Fort Lee. It's Pagan. She sends it over. Mount Olive once again with an answer. Pagan for Sango, who gets it over. And it's sent out. Mount Olive won the first set 25-20. Fort Lee wins the second set 25-19, and we will go to a winner-take-all third set. First, a 3-minute intermission. This time, the teams will not switch sides of the court, so Fort Lee, after winning with this current setup, looks like they're going to have it again. Or actually, no, I lied. So one of the officials came together with Shortino of the Marauders and Pagan of the Bridgemen, and they decided they are, in fact, going to switch sides. This was the setup for the first set, which, again, Mount Olive won 25-20. I'm going to step aside briefly once more and get you set up for this winner-take-all third set. Tommy Aquilina back here with you in the East Gymnasium of Fort Lee High School. Fort Lee set to take on Mount Olive in this winner-take-all third set. Frankel to serve to start things off for Fort Lee. Pagan, but a really Nice return by Amethyst Garcia, number 15 of the Marauders, and Mount Olive takes the lead. Fort Lee did not trail in that second set, and in each of the first 2 sets, the team that got off to a fast start ended up winning. That time it's an ace for Erin McLaughlin of the Marauders, and it's 2-0. Really fast start here on a Saturday morning for Mount Olive. They held on for the first set 25-20. Fort Lee, again, never trailed in the last set, and they ended up holding on 25-19. Now they trail 3-0 in this one. The winner of this one takes on a very good and top-ranked Tenafly team in the next round. That is the second round. McLaughlin to serve. It's a low one, and it cannot be kept alive. Fort Lee trails 4-0, and John Ziemba going to take a very quick timeout. I'd say that's a good call. Obviously not the start Fort Lee wanted here in this match set. Still, obviously, plenty of time for them to get back in it. Curiously, when they took a timeout in the first match, it really didn't help them. Mount Olive kept going on a run, and a similar phenomenon took place in the second set, where actually Mount Olive took a timeout to try to stop the bleeding, and they were unable to. So let's see what happens here. McLaughlin's still serving. It's a 4-0 advantage for Mount Olive. Fort Lee does get it over. Really nice play right there by Pagan to keep this one alive. Ivazoglu sets up Pagan. It's sent back by Mia Fernandez of the Marauders. Once again, they're going to set up not Pagan, but Eno this time. And it is sent out. Ball came over here, but it is sent out by a member of the Marauders, so Fort Lee is on the board. It's 4-1. Catherine Borisov will serve. Really nice teamwork there. A solid defensive play by Pagan and Ivazoglu, and it's 4-2 in favor of Mount Olive. East Gymnasium here at Fort Lee starting to fill up a little bit and get a little bit louder. Again, this is the match set. Ivazoglu with a nice play. Was it in bounds or out? They're going to say it was out of bounds, but touched on the way down by a member of Mount Olive, and so 3 straight points for Fort Lee. They trail 4-3. This time, the spike attempt is successful, as Pagan did hit it, but out of bounds. So it's 5-3 Mount Olive. They will serve again, and we will have a substitution. Sarah Wong will replace Mia Frankel. Rose Serali to serve for Mount Olive. She's been one of their better servers today. Fort Lee does get it back over impressively. Ivazoglu setting up Pagan, and Pagan took a little bit too much off that one. It hits her side of the net, and it's 6-3 in favor of Mount Olive. Good idea. The execution, not exactly what Pagan wanted. Just barely kept alive by Wong. They play it off the net. And Mia Fernandez spikes it right into the net, so 6-4 Mount Olive. Murtaugh will come off for Alexandra Conti, and Pagan will serve for Fort Lee. Wong and Borisov unable to save that one, and it's 7-4 Mount Olive. Coach Ziemba trying to rally his team. We have a substitution for the Marauders, and it's going to be Amanda Pribizuski on the serve. Conti sent it over. The Marauders try nearly successfully to keep it alive, but that one's going to go in favor of the Bridgemen. Tori Goris coming on, replacing Wong, and Paige Eno will serve. Eno sends it over. Little helter-skelter, but the Marauders get it over. Conti kept alive by Mount Olive. Ivazoglu sends it over. And this one is going to go down in favor of Mount Olive. It's an 8-5 advantage for the Marauders. Sarah Shortino doing the serving. Borisov keeps it alive. Ivazoglu hits the deck. It is sent over. Borisov keeps it alive, even though it came down and hit part of the net. But it's another point for Mount Olive. Ivazoglu trying to keep it alive off the net. She's unable to, and it's now 10-5 Mount Olive, and another timeout taken by Fort Lee. So like I said, you want to get off to a good start. Mount Olive did in the first set. Fort Lee did in the second one. Now Mount Olive has them doubled up, and John Ziemba has taken a second timeout here in this third set. He only took 2 in the first 2 combined. Trying to rally his team. They are the 8 seed, but a very, very small number of power points separated these two teams. They have very different records. They played very different schedules. But Mount Olive has played really well today. So that is the very loud horn. And we're just about set to get started again. 10-5 Mount Olive. Conti gets Fort Lee a point closer. It's 10-6. Now we're going to get a sub as Emma Schulman will come back on in favor of Ivazoglu, and that's so that she can serve. Mount Olive returns this one. Schulman keeps it alive, and we have a whistle when Borisov sent it up. She did it wrong somehow, so it's 11-6 Mount Olive. Scoreboard has not changed. We have the official chatting with them a little bit. Okay, there we go. So it's 11-6 Mount Olive, and Jennifer Solomon will be doing the serving for the Marauders. Haven't mentioned Solomon's name much today. She sends it over. They set it up for Goris, and that's going to go down as a point for Fort Lee. So make it 11-7. Murtaugh will now come in to serve, and Alex Conti will sit. Katie Murtaugh sends it right into the net. That's going to be a fault and a point for Mount Olive. 12-7 Marauders, Emily Fusillars to serve. They tried to keep it alive unsuccessfully. Ball ends up in the stands, and it's 13-7. There is no full number half of 25, but for all intents and purposes, Mount Olive is halfway towards winning this third set. Borisov sets up Pagan, who sends it over. I see what Mount Olive tried to do there, but they send it out, so it's 13-8. Trading points isn't going to work. Fort Lee needs to go on a little bit of a run here. It's going to be Mia Frankel to serve and try to do that. She sends it over. Wrong way for Mount Olive. They do get it over. Ivazoglu sends it on the other side of the net. Good defense by Pagan, and Fort Lee has their second straight point. It's 13-9. Crowd starting to get more into this one now as we are really getting towards crunch time. It's 13-9 Mount Olive. Frankel sends it over. And not a good return by the Marauders. It's 13-10, and now Tom Resko wants to take a timeout. A lot of timeouts here in the third set. It is 13-10 in favor of Mount Olive, but they led 13-7. Entering this one, Mount Olive 10-11 on the season. Not a very good record, but they have certainly played better than that today. Meanwhile, Fort Lee, 17-8 on the season, 17-7 if you don't include their round one loss to Paramus in the Bergen County tournament. Again, before this one, head coach John Ziemba told me that he felt like his team played their best match of the year just 3 days ago at Creskill as they won in 3 sets. Hoping to win this one in 3 sets as well. Frankel still on the serve. Murtaugh, Ivazoglu. Pagan took a little bit off that one. Garcia jumped too early, and there was no one there. So it's now 13-11. For whatever reason, when timeouts have been taken, when teams have been going on runs, they have not stopped those runs for either side. A whistle before the serve. What's going on here? I think Coach Ziemba just wanted them to adjust the scoreboard. So there we go. It is 13-11. Another good serve for Frankel. Good defense by Pagan, but not good enough. It hit off the side of her hand, stayed on her team's side of the net, and Mount Olive stops that run. So it's now 14-11, and I believe it's going to be McLaughlin serving. And sending it right to the other team's head coach. That's a point for Fort Lee. It's 14-12. So Coach Ziemba's team getting back in this one. Second set was pretty much close throughout. Good set, or good serve right there for Borisov. Even better play by the Marauders. Or no, they say it went out, so it's 14-13. Borisov gets to serve again. Good low serve right there. Sent back over by Mia Fernandez, and once again, it's sent out. Fort Lee has tied this set. They haven't led yet in this one. It's 14-14. Fernandez again. This one stays in. Murtaugh tried to save it and sent it out of play. So it's 15-14 in favor of Mount Olive. Fort Lee didn't trail in the second set. Now Mount Olive has not trailed in this one. They have a 1-point lead. Rose Serali to serve. Good low serve, and that's going to be an ace for Serali and a point for Mount Olive. 16-14 in favor of the Marauders. Frankel will sub out for Sarah Wong. Another good low serve. Wong keeps it alive. Borisov sends it over. Pagan sends it over. Nice play there as it hit the ceiling. Fernandez saved by Ivazoglu. Now she sets up Pagan. Good defense, but Pagan sends it right back over. Murtaugh keeping it alive. Borisov, Wong has to send it over. She does. Third hit, Fernandez. It's saved by Borisov. Ivazoglu sent over by Pagan. This has been one of the better volleys of the afternoon. And they send it out of play. It's a point for Fort Lee. Is it the afternoon yet? It is now the afternoon, so definitely one of the best volleys of the afternoon as it's a little after 12 o'clock here in Fort Lee, and it's a 16-15 lead for Mount Olive. Pagan, one of the better players for Fort Lee to serve. Sophia Pagan sends it over. Mount Olive will answer. Borisov for Ivazoglu. Mount Olive once again responds, and Mia Fernandez gets them a point. It's 17-15. Amanda Pribazuski to serve for Mount Olive, up by 2. And Borisov, it's out of bounds. Off of her hands, it's 18-15. This time, too much sauce put on that one, so it's 18-16, and Fort Lee will get to serve again. Goris replaces Wong, and Paige Eno will do the serving now. Phenomenal defense by Conti. This one's not over yet, though, and now it is. And Fort Lee once again has gotten to within 1. Tremendous defensive play right there by Alexandra Conti. Eno with a good serve. Mount Olive gets it over, though, and they come away with the point. It's 19-17. A couple players sub out, including Fernandez. And now it's going to be Shortino serving for Mount Olive. First, we have a timeout, and I believe that's taken by the Marauders. Second timeout they've taken, 4th overall here in this match set. Again, Mount Olive won the first one 25-20. Fort Lee won the second one 25-19. Mount Olive has never trailed here in the third set, and they're currently up 19-17 in this one. The winner advances to the second round of the NJSIAA tournament with 1 seed Tenafly awaiting. So again, Shortino to serve for Mount Olive, up by 2. Ivazoglu keeps it alive. Pagan has to send it over. She does. Now Mount Olive trying to respond. They get it over on their third hit. Now setting up Conti. Mount Olive has an answer for it. Ivazoglu setting up Conti again, and Conti sends it into the net. It's 20-17 Mount Olive. You have to win by 2. Mount Olive now up by 3. Shortino still serving. Ivazoglu sets up Goris this time. A dig for Sarali. Nice defensive play by Ivazoglu. Into the net. Mount Olive is able to return it. With one hand, Ivazoglu sends it back. Pagan keeps it alive. Ivazoglu sends it over. Mount Olive with an answer. Borisov, Ivazoglu for Conti. Once again, Mount Olive has an answer. They get it over, but they do so illegally, so it's 20-18, and Fort Lee will get to serve. Shulman will replace Ivazoglu and do the serving. Fort Lee trailing by 2. Good play, but an answer by Fort Lee. Conti sends it over. That is a point for Mount Olive. So it's 21-18, and now Shulman and Ivazoglu will swap spots again. Meanwhile, Amethyst Garcia will replace Sarali. It's going to be Solomon doing the serving for Mount Olive. They need 4 more. They now need 3 more. Conti sends that one over. Mount Olive responds. Now it's Pagan. Mount Olive once again recovers. Borisov setting up Goris. Each team sending it back and forth, but this one's going to go to Fort Lee. Conti will come off so that Katie Murtaugh can do the serving. It's 22-19 Mount Olive. They get it over on the third hit, Mount Olive does. Now Goris getting set up again. Garcia hits it over. Now here's Pagan. Mount Olive once again has a response. Goris hits it over softly. Another chance for Fort Lee. Pagan, but it's answered. Ivazoglu sent that one over. It hits the net. Borisov keeps it alive, but that's going to be a point for Mount Olive. 23-19 in favor of the Marauders. And we're going to have a substitution as the younger Przybyszewski replaces, or actually is replaced by the older one. That's Danielle stepping on. Murtaugh sent it backwards. It's kept alive, but it hits the net. Certainly not what Fort Lee wanted, and now this is match point for Mount Olive, with Fusiars serving. Murtaugh keeps it alive. Borisov for Goris. She sends it over. This time, an answer for Pagan. She's excited. She should be, and Fort Lee will get to serve, down by 4. Goris will come off, and Mia Frankel will come on to serve. And that's going to do it. Mount Olive picks up the victory. They come to Fort Lee, and they improve to 11-11 on the season, and they will take on Tenafly in the second round of the NJSIAA tournament. A valiant effort by John Ziemba's team, but ultimately Fort Lee does fall short. They won the Big North American Division, but their season is going to come to a close here at home to Mount Olive. They fall to 17-9 on the season. I do want to thank you so much for spending part of your afternoon, your early afternoon and morning here with me, Tommy Aquilina, on the YouTube stream of Fort Lee Athletics. I want to thank Fort Lee Athletic Director Michael Raftery. Thank you again so much for taking the time to listen. Once again, winning it in 3 sets is Mount Olive over Fort Lee. We will see you next time, folks.